So, what's the date today? The 27th of October. And Helen's going to tell us
what I know.
what you know. So start as far back as you know with your family, if you want, with your mum.
Oh, my mother and father.
Yeah, your mother and father.
Oh, well, my mother and father were... My mother was born in Cass Bay.
Where's that now, Dunedin?
Which is... No, Cass Bay is out of Littleton.
Oh, okay.
In Canterbury, yeah. And in those days, her father ran the abattoirs there. And she was born in Belfast, just out of Christchurch, but he then obviously went to run this abattoir in Cass Bay, and there was only the farmhouse up the back with the Wallaces, and there was one house in the middle of the grounds, the farm area, down to the beach, and they grew up there.
Do you remember what year she was born?
Yes, she was born on the 12th of June, 1909. And and they walked to Littleton South School. And there and back, and she was the fourth one in the family.
So what did Betty's parents do?
Her father ran the abattoir.
Okay.
And
her mother was just the
mother stayed home and had babies and
yeah.
So and she died. Her mother, there were two more boys born after my mother, and her mother died when she was 11. And her father was not a very nice person, and kicked them all out of home as soon as she was kicked out at 16 and told to go and find her way. So she went into service, which was the only thing you could do in those days, I guess. Yeah. Service meaning that you went and, I suppose, cleaned
What was the surname?
Oh, her name was Beatrice Edna Wright.
What was her parents' name?
Her father's name was William Baumba Wright, and her mother was Margaret Stewart before she was married.
So
her mother...
Were they New Zealanders? Or
No. Her father's father and mother would have both come out from England, and her mother's father, who was the steward, he was from Scotland, and his wife was from Ireland.
Okay.
He might be quite easy to trace then, because he's got an unusual middle name.
I've actually got history on that family.
Oh, okay, that's good.
I've got some history on that family. Yes, and so then my mother, the things I know about her growing up, as I say, she went from there. Her eldest sister, my auntie Belle, she must have married, and she was living in Dunedin, and she's the mother of Christine and Bill, of course. She was Brax, Anna, Belle, and she married Dan Brax, yeah. So they had Christine and Bill. And then Auntie Dot was married Dick Gallivan, and they lived in Christchurch. And her eldest brother, Uncle Alf, married Auntie Elsie. They lived in Christchurch. And then she had two younger brothers. Uncle Doug later married. He married a Jessie. And they had two boys, Stuart and Alan. Stuart lives in Tauranga, not far from Robert.
Oh, okay.
And Alan lives in Christchurch. And Auntie Dot had three children. Peter, he lives in Renwick. Shirley is now dead, but Anne's still very much alive and kicking. She's still out for she lives in Christchurch. I always catch up with her when I go down.
Big family.
Auntie Dot just had the three children.
Yeah. But I mean, all the whole
right.
circle, quite a big family. So when
So
when she got kicked out at home.
Oh, then, well, she, at some stage or other, she went into service. She also worked as a tailoress. She did some training as a tailoress. She was a very good sewer, my mother. So she worked as a tailoress at some stage or other. She also worked in hotels. I'm picking that she probably started off lower down, but she ended up being a cook in hotels for many years. She was cooking in hotels when we moved up to Auckland and everything.
Because
So
she worked at Aircarts at Queenstown for quite a while, didn't she?
she worked at Aircart. She went there, I'm picking, as a 19-year-old, she said. And she was working there.
So that would have been about 1928, would it? When was she born?
Yeah, about 1928. And she said it was just through the winter. And she said that they actually slept in tents out the back, freezing cold. And she said she was always terrified of. She said this many times in her life because I think her father was not a very nice person. Do you want all the dirty, all the muck as well?
Yeah.
No, she always said he was very sexual. I'm picking, I have a very strong feeling that he interfered with Belle, the eldest one. He also had a foul temper. Auntie Belle, I think, was very like him. She had a foul temper. My mother told the story. Auntie Belle told her, she was the only one she told this to. Auntie Belle bred dogs, and over many years I think they had dogs. Christine and Bill remember them, of course. But there was a particular dog that they loved very much. And Auntie Belle came home, and evidently there was a big teddy bear that had been in the family a long time, with Christine, I suppose. And Auntie Belle came home one day and the teddy bear had been ripped apart. And she picked up a lump of wood and hit the dog over the head and buried it and never told anybody. I've told Christine and Bill since then. They didn't know anything about it. She told Mother. But that was the temper that Auntie Belle had, and her father was the same. Her father horsewhipped her once. She was sent to get the horse, for the horse and trap to take their mother into town. And she fell asleep on the horse blanket in the middle of the paddock, and he went down and horsewhipped her. So he was a pretty nasty character. Auntie Belle unfortunately went on to other things. The stories, that she had lovers and miscarriages, and they said that their mother died of miscarriage. An abortion that the father would have done, evidently. She had quite a few, I think, which was pretty nasty. And I'm pretty certain that's how Auntie Belle died too. I think the kids came, Christine and Bill. I have heard the story, but I've forgotten a bit of it. That they'd come home and found to the hospital.
What happened to your father? How did your mum?
So then my mother, I think she was working in a milk bar or something at the time.
Whereabouts?
In Dunedin.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in Dunedin. And she met, I don't know, she met my father. And so they were married on the 20th of May 1931.
What's your father's full name?
Stanley Albert Morris.
And do you know his date of birth?
Yes, he was born on the 24th of October 2008.
It's getting the brain going, isn't it?
Well, I know all these, I'm good on birthdays.
Okay, so they were married in Dunedin?
They were married in Dunedin, yes, and that's that silver service over there. He was working, this was during the Depression, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And he was driving a baker's van, and I've got a photo of the baker's van. And that silver service was given to him on the occasion of the wedding. And it's got it engraved on and it's just recently, just last year, I realised it was the same birth date as Sophie was born.
Oh, okay.
So I've said, oh, well, that's Sophie's because it was, Yeah, it was the same date that she was born.
So when did you?
So they were. So I was born on the 10th of the 10th, 32, and they lived in Dunedin. Yes, and then my memories. I have a memory of my grandmother lived along the road from us. I can't remember the name of the street that they lived in, but I have a friend down there who I could remember it at one stage because we actually drove along the street, and Mary, who lives down there, took me to show me.
What street were you living in?
I can't remember. I was born at St Helens, St
Oh.
Helens Hospital
Yeah.
in Dunedin. And
It's okay.
sorry.
You can stop.
Hello. She and Aunt's go walking. Big walks.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, usually Saturday morning they go for big walks. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
your early memories of
so my
Dunedin?
early memories of Dunedin.
what was your dad doing again?
My dad at that stage, he was driving the baker's van during the Depression, and my mother always said it was just thankful because people were just thankful to have a job at that stage.
Yeah.
And the story she always tells, he suffered from headaches, which is strangely enough I suffered from for years and years and years over headaches. And she said he used to take packets of Aspiros, you know. Anyway, he was evidently late for work every day because she said his boss would be walking up and down outside the place. You know, he'd sack him every day. He got there late, yeah. So, but yeah, so anyway, my dad later went on to, he was always interested in motorbikes. He belonged to a motorcycle club when my mother met him. I've got photographs of them on outings. There's photographs of me when I was little, from the age of 6 months old, sitting on a motorbike.
Can you put your finger on one of those?
Eh?
Could you put your finger on one?
Oh yeah, they're in the books.
They're in
Yeah,
that book that
they're
I've
in
got.
the books.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
And wearing my father's motorcycle helmet, those leather helmets, you know, and me standing up, you know, aged about 18 months or something, and other ones, yeah. So my father always belonged to the motorcycle club. He was always interested in that. He later worked for,
Keep going.
yeah, he at one stage, I think it might have been after the, not sure it was after the war. I mean, I'm talking about the Second World War. I'm not sure. Yeah, it might have been after the war, perhaps, that he actually was in partnership with somebody and owned a cycle shop, motorcycle
Oh,
shop.
okay.
You know.
Did he have to go to war?
Oh yes, he was in the 20th Regiment in the Army. He was in Egypt and in Italy.
Oh, okay.
And I've got my stepmother is still alive, and she met him over there.
Oh, okay.
I'm jumping the gun. Is that it? Does it
No,
matter?
no,
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Well, I just called in to see her the other day, but she's 91, and she's got all the faculties.
So when he went off to war, him and your mother were happily married.
Oh, no.
They're still before that.
Oh, yeah. No, I was no.
Go
no.
back to that.
No, going back to Dunedin. My mother left my father when I was 3.
Wow.
She always swore that she would not stay in an unhappy marriage. Now, I don't know the details. I have a feeling that it might have been something. I wish I'd asked her, because I think she probably would have told me when I was older and I didn't get around to asking. But maybe he had an affair. I don't know. But she obviously wasn't happy, and so she left with
So
me.
did you still have contact with him?
Always. She never ever closed that contact. He was always welcome to come. even when we moved to Auckland years later, whenever he came to Auckland, he always came and saw me,
Oh,
take me out or whatever.
yeah.
And I think that played a huge part in my determined to stay friends later on.
Yeah.
You know, but no, Dad was always, and I've got lovely little aerograms that he sent me from overseas, which you might like to put
I'd
on
love
you.
to see that.
Yeah, I've got it.
From where he was
from
at
him.
war.
He wrote to them.
So Italy.
And they used to photograph them. They had to write on these aerograms. Then they'd photograph them because they came out. They were that big.
Right.
There's one in the album there that George sent back when Robert was born.
Right,
That's
yeah.
the sort of thing that was there.
So he fought in Italy and Egypt, did you say?
He fought in he went over in the 20th Regiment from Dunedin. He always lived in Dunedin. And then he am I carrying on my story?
No, you can carry on.
Okay. Excuse me. Yes, no, so we left, my mother left him, so then I stayed. When I left him, I can remember staying with her in some sort of a flat or something rather, and going to child. Gosh, they had daycare in those days too, because I can remember going there.
Yeah.
Then I stayed with Auntie Bell, and Auntie Bell had a fruit shop at that time. Mother wasn't a bit happy with me because I was hanging around outside.
So,
This was before school days.
of course, Mum was still working.
Yeah, she always had to work because there was no
What
no
was she?
benefit.
Do you know what she was doing at that time?
Well, she was working in hotels and things, I think, at that stage. And then she was working in one hotel, and they had a daughter the same age as me. And they must have been Catholics, but they must have suggested to her. But anyway, she went to St. Dominic's Convent and asked them if they would take me. And they said yes, but I would have to, because we're not Catholics, I would have to be treated the same. I was only 6, I was 5 at this time. I had actually had my 6th birthday in the convent. And it was lovely. I have very happy memories of that, with St. Dominic's Convent in Dunedin. And so I went there when I was 5, and she used to come up and see me. On her day off, she said there were 2 old nuns that always used to, love coming. They couldn't eat, they'd bring afternoon tea for her, but they couldn't have it with her. The nuns were very strict in those days. And she said that, but they used to love sitting there and having a good old gossip with her, She said they were lovely. And I have very happy memories. My memories of St. Dominic's were halfway down the staircase, there was a glass cabinet that had all the white veils, and on Sunday we put on the white veils and went to church. Well, you can imagine that appealed hugely to a 6-year-old. And also the other memory I have is we were in dormitories, this great big dormitory. There were only 3 of us little E's, all the rest were older girls. But I just remember we were in these, what they called stays. I don't know, do you call them something? I remember talking to your mother about them, what they were called in England, I can't remember now, but they were all sort of these rubbery button things that kept you warm in the winter. And I can remember you had to turn away from the room, turn and face the wall when you got changed. That were my 2 memories of St. Dominic's. Anyway, it must have been, the other memory I have of Dunedin being, I would have only been 18 months, 2 years, no, I was still with Mother and Dad, were still together. And I'm being left at my grandmother's house along the road. And I remember, and strangely enough, my mother or father don't remember this, but my aunt remembered it when I spoke to her about it. My aunt is now dead, she lived in Napier. And I can remember getting up and going home. So, yeah. But when I spoke to her about it, she said, I remember that. I can remember your father came. I was presumably been left there while they went out or something, Anyway, that's the only real memory that I have of.
Have you got any memories of hardships or anything like that during the war? Did that happen?
Well, as I
Were
say,
you too young to remember them?
No, the war I well remember. Oh gosh, no, I was 7 when the war came.
Yeah.
So anyway, we came up. My mother, as I say, my mother obviously met George.
Do you know where they met and how they met?
No, I don't. But she would have been working in a hotel at the time.
So that was in...
Probably
Whereabouts was that?
in Dunedin.
So
He would have come out on a British ship, which I'm not sure which one. It would have been I turned 32, 38, I turned 6, I think 36 and 38.
Seems
So
like
it would have been 1930, well, she might have met him 37, 38, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But whenever he came out on that ship,
It would have been.
it would have been before the war, you see, the war was
British
done in
naval
39.
ship, wasn't it?
It was a British Navy ship, and for some reason or other he was going to be based in Auckland, because that's why we moved to Auckland. We
Okay.
moved up to Auckland when I was 6, so I'd been in the convent for 6 months. At the end of that year, we came up and I stayed at Auntie Dot's for for about 3 months. I stayed with my Auntie Dot and went to school with my cousin Shirley. Now I'm presuming, because I don't, didn't ask, that Mother came up in that time, found a job and somewhere to live, and then came back and got me. And then I came up because I came up, and wherever we were staying at this time, the woman that she was staying with, Mrs. Lumley or something, this woman, this grandmother of Joy, my girlfriend that I went on, she came along, knew them, met me, went home and said to her, back to her daughter and said to Isabel, oh, met this lovely little girl. She'd be great company for Joy. Why don't you take her? And the mother's working. And so Auntie Izzy took me in and I went to live with them. And Joy was a year younger than me. And she died just over 2 years ago. We were best friends all those years.
Wow.
So I lived there.
Whereabouts was that?
It was in Westmere. And so I went to Westmere School.
And where? Excuse my ignorance, but whereabouts is Westmere?
Westmere's just, do you know Ponsonby Point, Westmere?
Yeah.
West Greyland, Westmere. So going over from, if you know the zoo, it's sort of the back part of the zoo in
Okay.
Westmere.
Yeah.
So we lived in Livingstone Street.
So what was your first memories of George?
First
Can
memories.
you remember meeting him? Or
No, I don't.
just
I don't.
slowly sort of
I
blending
don't.
in?
No, I don't remember that. But I'm picking that at some stage or other while I was at Joy's, I would have met him
Yeah,
somewhere along the way. I don't know. See, he would have been going backwards and forwards.
he would.
I was at Joy's place when the war started because I remember my mother used to, on her day off, she would come and perhaps probably stay the night. When I went to Joy's place, Joy slept in a big double bed, and her mother said to me, you might wake up in a duck pond in the morning because Joy wet a bed. Well, I wet my pants, so Joy always remembered me squatting down in the middle of the playground instead of, dying to go to the toilet.
I'll edit that bit out.
Yeah. Doesn't matter, they're fun
No.
bits. But anyway, so yes, I was living there. My mother, I can remember Auntie Izzy coming in and saying to my mother, and I was in the bed in the morning, the war's just been declared. And I also remember her coming in and saying, what was the other one? Oh, Michael Joseph Savage had died. So he must have died while I was there too, which is interesting because his memorial was up at Bastion Point there. Yeah, so anyway, so very happy memories of being at Joy's, really lovely time. Unfortunately, that only lasted 18 months because Auntie Izzy died of a tumour on the brain the day before my 8th birthday. So I had to go and live with my mother in the Grosvenor Hotel. She was working in the Grosvenor Hotel.
Is that in the city centre?
It's right next to the old Farmers Training Company in Hobson Street.
Oh yeah. Still there? Buildings.
The Farmers is still there. It's a hotel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the hotel, but it was the Grosvenor. So I went to live with her, So my birthday's October, so Izzy died the day before. So so I lived with my mother over that period, that Christmas holiday period. Well, my mother must have been worried sick about me. I was 8 at the time. But in actual fact, I look back on that time, I had to share a bed with my mother, you know. She wasn't supposed to have a child in the hotel, of course, you know, but she did. I remember I became very streetwise, which I valued, you know, I really valued. If you think of an 8-year-old now, I mean, I got around all over the city on my own at 8. You know, I used to walk down, we used to have our shoes, you know, mended by the bootmakers in those days. There was a bootmaker halfway down Victoria Street. I used to wander down and, you know, go in there and talk to them. They were great. And then down the other side, and up the other side was where I got glasses at age 7, which I hated. Went to school and hid them in my school bag, and Joy told the teacher I had. So I had to go and get them out and wear them. And yeah, on the other side was the optician where I used to go, you know.
So you pretty much would know the city.
Oh God, yes.
And the trams would all be running. And
oh, the trams, and there was a farmer's free bus that went from Hobson Street. Used to go up Hobson Street, down Victoria Street, down Queen Street, and up. Is that Wakefield Street? I think that's Wakefield Street. That one. Yeah, used to go farmer's free bus that took people up to the farmers. And, you know, I'd get around in there, so not a problem. Then I used to get the tram from outside that pub in the mornings to go to school, and I can remember we'd go through the bar, and my mother would fill up a bottle of raspberry drink, fizzy raspberry drink for me to take to school. I always remember that as clear as a bell, taking that to school with me. So then she had to find somewhere else for me to live. And when we first came to Auckland, the first people my mother met was Pat Facer, who was going out with somebody off the same ship as George, good friend of George's, Reg Facer. Pat Facer's still alive, by the way. She's 95. She was down at St Andrews, and I go down and see her regularly.
Okay.
Her son and daughter came to the party the other day.
Yeah.
Yes, and Pat came, she was the youngest of a very large family, so we became very close to that family. You know, they were...
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, so anyway, one of Pat's brothers and his wife took me. They had a new baby, and she'd been married and had older children, but she had this new baby, Maureen, and she had another little boy that was staying with them. And they lived in Grafton, in Parkside Terrace. And so I had to change schools. So I went to Grafton School for a year, which, looking back on it, I wasn't very happy when I was there. When you think about it, you know, all the losses I'd had.
Yeah.
Like, you know, lost my father, you know, basically. You know, then at this stage, you know, I'd lost Joy and Auntie Isabel, you know. I'd lost all of those people and was staying in a not particularly happy home, you know, at aged 8. So, and I know lots of kids, and I am very well aware of kids today who that's almost become the norm, you know, so many kids, you know, separated families. And that's why I'm so, you know, it's so important that people stay friends and let the kids have access to families. Anyway, so I was there for a year and went to Grafton School, and then my mother got a flat in Ponsonby, and that house is still there. It's a big old two-storied house. I think it's I could actually tell you if I went and looked, because I've still... this was during the war, of course. This was all during the war.
Yeah. What was the name of the street?
Ponsonby Road.
Oh, okay.
It's Ponsonby Road, straight opposite O'Neill Street. And during the war, because that's when when I went there, I was able to walk along Ponsonby Road to the corner of Richmond Road and get the tram from there, which would take me through, and I could get off and walk through to Westmere School. So I went back to Westmere School,
Oh, okay.
which made me very happy. because I was, that was my old school.
So things were on the improve, really.
Oh yeah, they were much better. And I'm picking that this is where Mother and George, they got the flat so that they could be together at this stage.
So what year was that?
I was 9, so it was probably at the end of that
41.
year. So I would have been 9. I was 9, so that would have been
1941, was it?
41, wouldn't it be? That's right.
Was it at that time, I've got a copy of George's war records, where he was and what boats he was on, so
Right.
I don't exactly know where he was, but I can track that down where he was at that
Right.
time. And I know for quite a while he was on the Mediterranean running
Right.
to North Africa.
Right.
So-
that during the war?
Yeah, during the
Right.
war.
See, I don't know that.
About that time of the war, I think he was in the Mediterranean.
Right.
Because a lot of the New Zealand forces were in North Africa,
Right.
and it'd be on the Leander, I think, and it was running the gauntlet through the
Quite a
Gibraltar
few
Straits.
ships that he was.
So he would probably have been away for, when he was away, he would probably been away for quite a
Oh
quite a
yeah,
while.
yes they
Yeah,
were in
yeah,
those
yeah.
days.
A year
Yeah.
or more.
Well, we lived in that flat. It was upstairs, a 2-story place. Had a lovely view out to the harbour and the rest of it. And we lived up there for about 18 months, I think. And Mother still had to work, of course,
Yeah.
because she and George were not married, because he was still married in England.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was cooking in hotels. She was cooking somewhere or other. She changed from the Grosvenor to the the Albert Hotel, which was just below Smith and Curry's. It was just somewhere down there. Kitchens were down under, I can remember it, and was concrete floors, and she always said this is what did her veins, and working on concrete floors and big heavyweight big pots and things, and it was cold and there were rats running around and things. Yuck. Anyway, she worked there for a long time because I can remember going to visit her. But as I say, she used to come. I mean, I just feel for her. She was an incredibly strong woman. Here she was, working with me in a flat. She would go to work. She would go out to big dinners in the middle of the day. She would have 2 hours off in the afternoon, come home, cook my meal, and then go back to work to cook dinner at night. Now, I came home from school and ate dinner on my own every night. She would leave it. Mrs. McCarthy's owned the house. They lived downstairs, and Mrs. McCarthy was very kind to me. And I used to go to her on a Sunday lunch for the big roast dinner. She and her husband and her daughter, the daughter taught piano because she started me off on the piano, and then I later went along to St Mary's and was interviewed by Sister Mary Leo, the famous one who interviewed, who was Kiritakana was teacher and all the rest of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I learned piano along there for a while, and then and we lived across the road from the Catholic church, which is gone now.
So were you still going
This is in
to Catholic churches at that time? Because
yes, and funny enough, Pat Kelly, she was when I first met her. I was 6 and she was 21 when I first met Pat. And she was Pat Kelly then, before she married Reg Facer. Yeah, and she, so all of her sister, her older sister, had children around my age. She lived along the road in Ponsonby Road too. And they were Catholics, so of course I used to go to the church with them sometimes.
Yeah.
And Mrs. McCarthy used to take me on a Sunday evening. So presumably my mother was still working, you see. And I used to love it, the little girls had the little flower petals all over it.
So did you ever get confirmed?
No. So I begged my mother to become a Catholic, which she wouldn't let me do, of course. We hadn't grown up in any particular religion, but anyway, I started going to the Church of England when we were in Ponsonby, and I used to go there regularly. Anyway, then my mother excuse me, got pregnant, and so we need a bigger flat. So George was on the same ship as a Royal Marine who owned a house. He and his wife owned a house in Anglesey Street in Ponsonby, and it was down a slope, and underneath the house was a flat, a separate flat from upstairs, and it had a huge big living room on one side and the bedroom, and there was a little partitioned off bedroom that I slept in. So we moved around there. Unfortunately, my mother was pregnant at this stage. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be so good because the wife of the Royal Marine, her mother lived there, and she and her girlfriend used to run it just about as a brothel. They were Yanks, because Auckland was full of Yanks at that time. The Yanks, you know, parties. My mother had my brother, you know, he was born in you've got his birth date, haven't you? The 23rd of April, 1944.
Oh, yeah.
And here she was worried sick. Here I was, 11 and a half, living down there, all these servicemen and such like, and a baby. So she used to worry herself sick because we had to go from one room to the other. The stairs, the toilet was outside, of course, as many old houses were in those days. So everybody had to come down those stairs between our two living rooms, you know, and out there. And she used to worry herself sick. So she drove the housing, wasn't called housing court then, it was state advances. She drove them crazy. Wrote to them, went to see them. They reckon that she got a state house, and I think she got it in 8 months. And they told her that she drove them crazy.
And that was this house here?
That's the house in the front, yeah.
So
So we moved into it the beginning of December 1944.
it was brand new.
Brand new, yep. They came out, Mother and George and Robert came out to see it by bus. And George said, "Oh, it's a long way. I'll only be able to come home out here on weekends." Well, of course, you know, everything seems a long way when you the first time round. But
So it would be pretty much a greenfield site in those days, was it? You know, was there a
it
lot
had
more
been-
houses round the way?
No, but there was a couple of old houses next door up here.
Yeah.
There's an old place where the dairy thing. Another one just up there, the Yorks lived, and the
Was the dairy there?
No, there was an old cottage there that the I think their names at the moment, and there were across the road was all the bit that isn't the school ground now, that has houses on that huge big square on that corner.
Yeah.
Was all tomato market gardens. A lot of tomato market gardens around here. Down the road, the first girlfriend I ever had, her father did that tomatoes. At the back here, there were 3 state houses built here. There were 2 at the back here. That was a private house. There was nothing on the corner. There was nothing. Down below there in the lower part of where the one side is the Glendale College grounds. I think that was cows over that side and there were horses on this side, or vice versa, one or the other, because that was right down in the gully. And so it was fairly sparse out here.
So was there a regular bus service into the city from here?
Yes, there was. No, wait a minute. No, there was. No, we used to have to walk up to the top. We used to walk up to St Helier's School for the buses.
Oh, okay.
No, the buses weren't down here at that stage. They must have been here fairly. There might have been an early, because I can remember. Now, when we first shifted out here, I still had to go to school for the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks of school, and I used to catch the bus down here. So there must have been an early morning one or something. Yeah. I'd catch it from just down here by the paddocks. And I went to, to all the way to Westmere School. I'd get the tram way over
So it must have been like moving into a palace, moving into a new...
For my mother it was. And for us, both. It was the first house. It was the first home that my mother could call home. But it was very much my mother's house. For me. You know, I mean, that's understandable now. And I was very happy there. I have very, very happy memories of my teenage years. I absolutely loved my teenage years. Somebody said to me once, how can you love your teenage years? They're always terrible. I said, well, mine weren't, because I had such an, like
Depends
this
on
young life,
Yeah.
you know,
it's
been all
very
over the place,
good
staying
for
here,
friends.
there, and everywhere. And finally, we had a house, and it was, you know, it was steady. You know, it was.
Yeah.
You knew we were coming home to.
Stability.
Stability is the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
So
It
what
was,
was your feelings about having a young brother popping on?
Oh, absolutely delighted. Yeah, and yeah, no, we were absolutely over the moon over him.
So
Yes.
what year did George Brett get married?
No, that is later.
It is later. I know it
Because
was later, because Rob said it was later.
because Robert didn't know about it until much later. Until he, I don't think she told him. I don't think Mother told him, because he was very upset to find out that they hadn't. Not because they weren't married, but because she hadn't told him. But it was a big no-no in those days, and the reason. I mean, I didn't know about it at the time that it was happening. But seemingly what had happened was, it was all to do with your grandmother. So he was away, met her. Then he found out from her, your grandmother's brother,
Harry,
let him know, let
Yeah.
George know that she was having an affair. And he never ever faced up to her, but he did it through the post, I guess, getting a divorce. But it seemingly took forever.
Yeah.
Well, she'd
Because-
already married by 40. Was it 41 she remarried? She'd married
Well-
Dick, and on the marriage certificate she's got down as a widow. You see, so she was.
This is what held things up. See, my mother couldn't get any money. This is the trouble.
From
She had
George.
Robert. She couldn't get a pension. She couldn't get. This is why she had to work
Yeah.
right up to the time, because she had a real battle. She told me this later. She had a real battle, you know, for the Navy to accept that she, you know. That,
Yeah, because she wasn't married. Everything.
Yes.
Everything was
So it was a
self-official.
real battle, and she had a real struggle.
So she.
But
so,
I have to tell you, I never went without anything. I was always beautifully dressed, and yeah.
So according to the paperwork then,
Right.
Joe, she remarried in a bigamous marriage, really, because she was still married.
Well, apparently.
Claiming that she was a widow.
Because apparently, in them days, I don't know if it was. I know it was for the First World War, and I wasn't sure about the second. But if you hadn't heard anything from your husband within a 7-year period, you could say that you've not heard of them, so you could put yourself down as a widow because you hadn't heard anything. So she most probably has had contact, but has said she hasn't,
Right.
and then she married Dick. So it depends on, you know, when the divorce.
We need to find out. I'm not sure when they married.
Joe's got it all.
Oh, you've got
I don't know.
when Mother and George got married.
I don't know
Oh.
about
I
John
need to
We haven't
find
got any
out.
photographs of that, have we?
Well, there wouldn't be any photographs, I don't think. I
I
don't know.
I don't.
Because I don't know when it was.
I've got
I
one
can't
of George's
remember
first.
Bob
But it was certainly after Robert was born.
I can't remember if Bob told me when they
Yes,
got
I think
married.
he
I think
found-
Bob knows.
yes,
Because
he-
Bob had to. 'cause
That's
he
right.
wanted
When
a
he
British
wanted the English,
pass- yeah.
that's right. That's when he
had
found
to,
out.
He had to get a copy. Now I've
That's
asked Bob about when the divorce and that was, but I've had no joy.
He probably doesn't know when the divorce.
But he
was.
would have got the paper. He had to have
Right.
had the paperwork to prove
That's right.
to get his
But he,
passport.
yeah. But that's a long time ago.
So when
Well,
it
we need
came
to
through,
find
I
out.
So I don't know.
We can find out.
Oh yeah, easy to look up. I
Mrs.
can look up.
Detective.
No, oh yeah, look up because I'd like to know myself.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
I'll write that
It doesn't
down.
always
you
have
just-
on the internet. It doesn't always have.
No, but it'll have when they got married. We can find out when they got married.
Yeah, on the internet,
Yeah.
you'll be able to.
Right.
On here,
Yeah.
it's a bit. It's like in England, it's a lot easier, but there's not a lot
No, but you can find out
records.
marriages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, right
It's like
down
they
Andy.
it's like I can
I'm
find
the
George.
secretary now. You're supposed to be the secretary.
I can find you can the electoral New Zealand electoral rolls
Mm.
Oh,
are on
really
the
good.
internet now. On that
Right,
site.
right.
So
New
you
Zealand
can see-
records are
and
really
I could-
good.
Yeah, they
I've
are.
picked up where they were living. I can't, without looking at my computer, I can't say what year.
Where? Here, then?
It's like at Riddell Road.
Yeah, they'll live it.
Yeah, but I think there's one of where George was before they moved to wherever they
Devonport.
lived.
His
He'd have,
address was
been in, he'd have
Devonport.
been at the naval base in
Yeah.
Devonport.
Yeah.
But anyway, they got married at some stage or other. But as I say, I remember, you know, the time out here was lovely. And I mean,
So did you go to Glendowie School then? Did you move to that school?
me,
Yeah.
Glendowie School wasn't built.
Wasn't there?
No, it was St Helens School.
Oh, so
No,
you-
Robert was a foundation pupil at Glendowie.
Okay.
No. But he started
So
off...
you had to go to St Heliers?
Yeah, I went to St Helens School
Yeah.
for Form 1 and Form 2.
Yeah.
I was always a year behind in my schooling because I'd been to so many schools in the beginning.
It was
You know, I'd been to one, I don't know how many in Dunedin, 1, 2, 1 in Christchurch, you know, 3. Anyway, a few. And then St Heliers still goes right up to Forms 1 and 2, what do they call them these days?
Intermediate.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Intermediate years to third.
so you'd moved here and George was still coming and going.
Oh, he was still in the Navy, yeah.
What year did he sort of leave?
I can't remember what year he came out.
I think he was in for 20 odd years. And
30 he was in, wasn't he?
30
Oh, was
years,
it 20? 21 years he was in. He was 21 years he was in,
I've
wasn't
got
he?
it at home.
Yeah, I think it was 21 years he was in the Navy. Wasn't it?
He joined the Marines when he
He was
was.
about 17, wasn't he?
He was
Yeah.
about
He's
18.
Yeah. He got kicked out of home as well.
1926.
He got kicked out of home
Mm.
too.
1926. No, 1926. I think he joined
He was born in 1908,
because his
so that can't be right.
He was only young. He was
Yeah.
very young.
I thought he was
his
17.
mum died in
His mum.
1925,
Right.
and I thought he joined just after his mum had died.
Well, he was born in... Oh, okay, right, yes, of course. That's right.
She
He was
she
born
died
in
in
08.
1925.
So, okay, right.
I think it was about 49. So, looking at the records, I think it was
Right.
2 or 3
I'm
years
sure
after
it's
the war.
1926.
Yeah, but when
Yeah.
he came out,
Oh, when he came out, I
Yeah.
don't know when he came
Yeah.
out.
it was the late 40s. It was between the end of the Second World War in 1945.
Yeah, I'm
and
pretty
19.
certain he did 21 years, because he
Yeah.
always used to talk about
Yeah,
did 21
we've
years
definitely
in the
got those records.
Yeah.
So when he actually came out of the Navy, that was the time really when home life would settle down to having 2 parents there all the time.
Yeah.
A mother and a stepfather.
No, he was a lovely, lovely, lovely man.
You always got
He was
on
a
it?
lovely stepfather. The stupid part was that because my dad was still alive and I called him Dad, there was always this ridiculous business of what I was going to call him.
Mm.
So I called him Uncle for quite a few years. And then Father for a while. And I never, it was stupid.
Never know what to call him.
Then I
Well,
called
that's
him
understandable.
George in the later years.
So did your father and George meet?
Oh yes, I've got a
They-
photo.
they
I've
got
got
on
a photo
fine?
of all 5 of us. My mother and father and I've got sitting on this couch over in Monterey Street with my mother and father and stepmother and stepfather all together.
Can you
On
put
my
it-
45th birthday when Robert and mother and George gave me that watch.
Can you put your finger on that photo?
I can find it. Yes, I will find it for you.
I'll write that down so I don't forget.
It's yeah. Yeah, I've got it in one of those albums, I'm pretty certain. Yeah.
Okay, so where are we
Yeah,
now?
so, okay.
So Bob,
So the teenage years of thing. I also, yeah, Robert, he was a lovely, lovely little boy. He really was a darling little boy. He was George's nature, you know, too soft, of course, was where my mother, and my mother was a very strong, and when I am, we are in our family, pretty strong. But George was probably too soft for her. But then, you know, thank God, because as she said, he was hopeless with money like Martin was. But as she said, he joined the Navy. You join the Navy, you never have to have any worry about money at all.
No.
You get paid, you go ashore, the money runs out, you go on board again.
Yeah.
He never had to pay his wife, because they do it. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to think. And so he would come home from work and give her the pay back. And but thank goodness, because that's what, that's what we paid for the house, that's what paid for the house, that's what gave me money at the end. And
Initially, the house would be rented, you'd be paying rent.
oh yes, they.
And then-
I think that we moved in 44, and I think that I saw somewhere that they bought it around about 57 or something like that. They bought it.
Okay. So instead of paying rent, then they'd have to pay a mortgage
That's
for a
right.
certain amount of time.
And in those days, you got 25, 30 a year. You know.
You probably maybe cost them a couple of $1,000s to buy that house originally.
It was. I think it was £2,000, £4,000, £2,000. I think it was £2,000.
Yeah, that'd probably be
Yeah.
right.
Which was an incredible investment, yes. But, as I say, my mother, as she used to say so often, I worked too bloody hard to waste any of my money.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she was a very good manager as far as, and when we moved out here, it was interesting because there was, just up the road there's what was called the Onion Store, and right up the top there was another little store. But Hutchinson's, which still has a store in Queen Street, and had one in Newmarket. They used to deliver, and they used to come once a fortnight. And the truck would come, and she'd give them the list for the next fortnight,
Provisions.
In a fortnight. So the everyday things, I guess,
You get.
she'd walk down the bay and get the meat and things like that.
And she'd grow her
Oh.
own vegetables, of course.
Well, this huge big vegetable garden she had out here.
Yeah.
She was a very good gardener. She loved gardening. You can see by the photos, a lovely flower garden she always had. Do you remember that?
I've got
Lovely
photographs
flower gardens.
of Betty and Bob actually digging potatoes
Yeah. Oh, right.
down here. So
And she had, the backyard was full of fruit trees.
Yeah.
There were 2 pear
and she
trees.
she
And she bottled everything.
bottled everything up. I
As we
remember,
did. I mean, I did that too.
I remember going on that when my parents
Yes,
came in
she
1980.
saved all that.
We took bottles and
That's
bottles
right.
of fruit in this camper van, and she insisted on putting them in the cupboards at the top so she
Oh,
could
they
reach
fell,
them.
didn't they?
And the first corner we went round, all the doors fell open and all the bottles came crashing.
Oh.
But yeah, you'd never had to buy fruit. It was always it'd last a year, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, we all did it in those days.
Yeah.
I always did it too. And,
So
and
your teenage years,
my teenage years were fabulous.
music.
Oh,
Now this video.
parties. We had party. That was a part. I grew up in a party house because George would bring people home from the Navy. So that actually went on for quite a few years because, I can remember right at 15, 16.
Can you remember any particular songs or?
Oh, we had a piano at home because I learned the piano,
Okay.
and so.
I've got to put music to,
Oh,
not to this bit.
oh, look! I've got all the old CDs there.
Okay,
And
I
can
just need
pull
to
out
know.
the old stuff. Somebody, Ida Gould, she used to live around the corner.
You need
her-
to picture
her
tracks.
husband, and she'd be sitting there playing all night, like the old days. We all stood around the piano singing.
So later on today, I need to make a list of,
I'll lend you those
and we'll write down
CDs.
particularly which ones you
Oh,
like.
okay,
And
right.
as it
Yeah.
goes forward through
Yeah.
the tracks,
Right.
the music will
Oh God.
get more modern. So if it
Okay.
gets to the
Yep.
stage where it's too modern, you don't like it. There's a thing called the volume control.
Yeah,
you
to the
can turn
volume
down.
off.
But Lane's also, and hopefully
Oh
all the
yeah,
kids,
well of course.
they're going to have an input.
Good.
Obviously going to
Yeah,
be a
good.
Beatles track for Lane.
Good. Well, one of my favourite ones later on when the kids were living. Wait a minute. Leslie's she had the record for years. Oh, I loved that. What was it? Now, completely forgotten. Anyway.
Well, that's Leslie,
Anyway.
she comes.
Oh yes. Okay. So my teenage years were my first boyfriend around the corner. I was 12 when we first moved out here. Terry Flyger. I used to learn music around at the convent, and bike round, of course, had a bike. Biked everywhere in those days. And I remember Terry Flager used to work for the grocer up the road. He was 12. He had a big basket on the front of his bike and he'd bring me home in the basket sometimes, But I always remember being at music one day and Sister Rita and Gretchen Palmer, this girl from school, came and she said, Terry Flager's waiting outside for you. Well, Sister Rita, who's Terry? Oh, she sent this note home to my mother. My mother laughed. But she had to go round there and say, oh, it was all right. Don't worry about it. It was just a ring.
So when you had parties there, you'd have everybody round the piano and sing songs?
Oh, God, yes, all the time.
A few beers and...
Oh, absolutely. And they used to play games. One of the games I always remember was a honeymoon couple with a suitcase, and they'd have, presumably, men, vaguely remember these things, men's and women's clothes, and they'd have to go out into the hallway and put on these clothes and run. I don't remember whatever else, but I just remember that suitcase game. And Rolly Hicks was, he was English, he was one of the navies, and he used to do these fabulous old, you would know them, some of those old English, when they did these fabulous old spiels.
Speeches, oh yeah.
Tell me, remind me, what were the names of some of them?
That's before my time.
Yeah, of course it was before your time. It was earlier than mine, but they were still very...
Yeah.
And Rolly could do them. Oh, God, they were good. He was so clever.
Was there any particular music that you would associate with your mum and George?
Probably, but I need to look at them.
Okay, that's fine.
And we should try to remember. Yeah.
So how old, I'm moving forward probably a bit too far now,
That's
we
all
can
right.
soon shoot back again.
Yeah,
How old were you when you met Martin? And how did that happen?
Oh, okay. Right. Well, let's speed through just before that, let's speed through my, teenage years.
Yeah.
Lots of boyfriends, lots of whatever. Working, left school at 15. Went to a polio epidemic,
So when you left school, what did you do?
the polio epidemic came and we weren't allowed to go back to school for the first term in 1948. And so girlfriend and I went and got a job at Cormer Mills, which was the old hull proof. And it was in Chancery Street in the middle of the city, just off High Street. And we got a job there for the holidays, we thought, in the factory making socks. And I loved it. So I said to my mother, I don't want to go back to school. That was the third form I left at the end of. And she said, well, you didn't seem to be learning much, but she said, you can't stay in a factory, you have to learn a trade. So I stayed at Cormer Mills for the year. Then she got me a job in tailoring, men's tailoring. That was in the RSA buildings in High Street. And I did men's tailoring, and we used to do everything by hand.
No sewing machines?
Yeah, there was somebody on a sewing machine that sewed up maybe the seams of the trousers or something, but everything was done by hand. It was beautiful tailoring, and I was doing buttonholes for men's flies, all by hand, and all that sort of thing.
Similarities to my mother, really.
Yep, and my mother had done tailoring too, you see.
So how many girls or people would
there were 3 of us, and interestingly enough, we were all at school together, at Kofi Intermediate School. Okay. I went there for a year. So then, at the end of that, the guys who were running their family, they went back to Australia. And my mother had been manpowered during the war, before she had Robert, obviously. Oh, I think she was pregnant with Robert.
What's manpowered?
Manpowered was you were told where to go.
Oh, okay.
You had to work. You had to work somewhere. She might have been pregnant at that time because she wasn't working in the kitchens, in the hotel at that time.
Yeah.
And she had to go, and she was doing ironing in a place called Fascinator Frocks, which was in Cook Street. And she was so impressed with their quality of work that she went to see them, and they took me on. And I went there, and I worked there for 2 years, and that was fabulous training. I just, I like from the hand sewing, then I did all the next bit of sewing, You know, we did the little roulette buttonholes and the scallops and, you know, all that stuff. So at the end of 2 years, 3 of us from there went fruit picking in Nelson the next year, beginning of the
Wow.
next year. In those days, they would pay you fare one way
So it's
by
down-
second class train down to Nelson
so
and
you,
boat.
you go
If you stayed for the whole 3 months, you got your fare paid.
you go down to Wellington by train and
Yep.
then over on the
Second
phone.
class train, across on the boat. And we worked for a Joff Benge and his wife, and they had 4 little girls and 1 little boy in a high chair. We worked there for 3 months and we didn't want to come home, so we got a job in Motueka in the tobacco factory, which was where the leaves were brought in from the fields and the leaves were picked, and then 1 leaf would be tied around the top of the tobacco, so it came in. We worked in the factory. This was then we lived in the hostel, freezing cold during the winter, and they would come in. We'd pick them up and part them in the middle and put them over on a moving stick that was on a line that would be lifted off and put into the dryer.
Yeah.
So we'd get there freezing. We'd bike from the hostel down to the factory, and they'd put us in the dryer to warm us up in the morning, thaw us out. God, it was cold. Joan slept under 9 blankets. I remember. So we were there for the 3 months until that season finished, and then we got a transfer to the cigarette factory in Wellington. So we worked in the cigarette factory for the rest of the year.
You ever smoke?
Yeah, I smoked. I started smoking at 17. Smoked till I was 37.
So it was a good
20
place to wear
years.
that.
It was great. We'd fill our pockets with that. Fill your pockets. You know, we'd wore white smokes, smocks, and fill these pockets up. And I used to collect them and send boxes of them home to George. Yes, yeah. So that was great. We loved that year. Then I came back and then I got a job as a sample machinist, and I worked for Classic for 2 years there. And then when I had a big 21st round at the Tamaki Yacht Club. Yes. And so anyway, that year that I was 21, my mother used to, always for Christmas, we went somewhere different for a holiday. She'd hire a batch,
Bob can
swap
remember.
houses.
Bob can remember going by train to Waihi Beach
Yep, we
in a
did.
batch
Yep,
through the gorge before the railway
we
lines got through
did.
the gorge.
And she also swapped houses in Tauranga at one stage.
Oh, is that right?
Mm.
Anyway, carry on. Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted.
No, it's all right. It's where she hired this batch in Waiheke, and it was at, I've since found out, I used to call it Little Palm Beach, but it actually isn't Little Palm Beach, it's Boat Shed Bay. It was full of boat sheds, and it had one batch right against the hill. I've got photos of it. There, so anyway, my girlfriend Joan and I, who would have gone fruit picking, she always came with us for Christmas, and there was Robert, and we had friends up from Wellington, my mother and George's friends up from Wellington. A couple came up, so there was quite a crowd of us down at the batch. And one particular evening, Joan and I used to spend our life going to dances and, you know, on the beach and all the rest of it. I was 21, and this particular evening we saw a little yacht just off the point out there, and thinking, God, it's going to hit the rocks and knock people. Anyway, the next morning my mother went down to the beach, as she did every morning, and the fishermen were pulling the yacht up. And it was Martin. And Martin and Bob, who they'd immigrated together. Bob now has Alzheimer's, he's the only one of the 3 that immigrated together. Bob had, the rudder had broken, and Bob had gone and got the early boat back to Auckland to get it fixed. And the fishermen helped Martin pull the yacht up on the beach. And my mother invited him up for breakfast, and that's how we met. Very romantic. But of course it didn't take off at the but a bottle of the Bowls gin. Anyway, he came up for breakfast, and of course they invited him up that night, so he and Bob came up that evening and bought a bottle of Bowls gin. the real Dutch stuff, you know. And I showed you the link.
Yeah.
And of course, Alf that came up, that was up from Alf that was up from Christchurch, Alf and Gladys, that's right. He was a heavy drinker. They finished that bottle off that night, and I kept the bottle and later made a lampstand of it. Had it for years, and I'm not sure whether Mark took it. I'm not sure what happened to it in the end, but I had it for donkey's years. Yeah. So anyway, when we got back, I mean, oh, that's right. Joan and I met because they had to move from where we were. They moved around to Matiatia. Then we met them up at a dance, and you know, and then we had their phone number because they had immigrated in '52. You want the story? You want the story? Okay. Martin had. Do you want any of his life story?
I want as much, especially if you know anything about him being in a prisoner of war camp and that part. So as far back as you can with Martin.
Yeah, you could ask Elizabeth some of it. But anyway, as far back, Martin was born in Indonesia, in Manado, in Celebes. His father was a school teacher missionary. His father and mother had gone to Indonesia when they were first married. From Holland, yeah. And he taught in quite a lot of places. But Martin was born in Manado, and Nellie was born there too, I'm not sure. Anyway, so he'd grown up in, as I say, several places because, like the time I married him, we were all these names were familiar to me. And when I went to Indonesia, so some of the places he lived in as a boy, and some of the places he lived in the concentration camps. So when he was, the war had started obviously, you know, the Japs had come down to Indonesia. His father had been taken away straight away. As I say, Elizabeth will give you more information. I can't.
Elizabeth is Martin's sister.
Younger sister. And of course she was a lot younger, so she won't remember a lot of it, but she does remember some of the concentration, because she stayed with her mother all the time. Their father was taken away to a men's camp straight away, and they didn't know whether he was alive until at the end of the war. Martin stayed with his mother and sisters for a while because he was born in 1928, so he was what?
7 or 8,
11,
something like that.
12. No, he was older than that.
Oh, older.
Yeah, he was older than that.
28.
11. So when he got to, I think it was 14 or something, when the boys were taken away from the women's camp. So he was put into another camp again. So his memories were different again. Some of the memories that I remember that he's told me were, because they were teenage boys, they were probably better off than some of the men because they got to work. And Bob Hartman, who immigrated with him, he wasn't with Martin because they met later in Holland in the MTS, but seemingly quite a lot of the soldiers were actually from Formosa, they weren't Japanese.
Okay.
So I think they perhaps, there were obviously pretty hard times, but it wasn't perhaps as bad. And Martin said he remembers, one of the things that Martin did, he lost all respect for anybody of higher positions, because he said he saw the so-called, the mayor, the people who'd been held high positions in villages that he'd lived in, go down and not stand up. And you can imagine to a teenage boy, these guys that they were supposed to have looked up to, all of a sudden crumbling. So he lost all respect for those sort of people. And that,
So when after the war, did Martin and the whole family go back to Holland?
yes, they went back to Holland, and of course Holland was in a terrible state after the war. There was no food. He'd only, I think he'd briefly been back to Holland for a trip when he was about 6, didn't remember. But he hated Holland. Family were religious. He always reckoned they went to church twice on Sunday. He'd grown up in Indonesia. Different food, different climate, different lifestyle. They had servants, they had 5 servants. You know, they had a gardener, they had a cook, they had they had to clean everything. Goes back to Holland after the war, you can imagine, as a 16, 17-year-old, 16, 17. They were separated, they couldn't all live together because there was no housing, and I think they did get back together at some stage. Then he, of course, he'd missed schooling, so he had to go to a technical college, MTS or something it's called. That's where he met Bob Hartman, who he later immigrated with him. And then his mother died when he was 20. She had heart problems, and she really suffered from the war and all the rest of it. And just shooting back quickly. Yeah. Martin's
parents both survived the war in the prison camps.
Yes, they did.
Did they actually? Do you know if they actually called back up with each other in Indonesia, or did they have to go back to Holland to meet up with each other?
No, I think I've got a feeling that he didn't know his father was alive, or met up, or heard. Maybe I think they got up to Singapore or something, and that's when they heard. Whether they actually met up there, and Elizabeth might be able to tell you, I'm not sure. That they found out that people were alive, perhaps. Perhaps there were records were there, or they found out that people were still alive. But when he got back, as I say, he went back to, So, so he had some of this. He hated Holland, hated the cold. Bob said he remembers Martin when all the school kids, young teenagers, they'd be out skating and Martin would be sitting over a stove inside because he loathed the cold, hated Holland, slipping and sliding all over the ice on the streets, all this business. Anyway, he was called up in the army and had to go back to Indonesia for a year when he was 20, had his 21st birthday in Indonesia.
Would that be sort of owned by Holland in those days? Or was
well, no, they were fighting for independence.
Oh, of course they were.
And he had to go back. He went back as an interpreter.
Oh, of course, because he'd be fluent.
He was a sergeant. He'd have done well with that voice, you see, as a sergeant.
Yeah.
He spent 3 months of it in hospital with typhoid.
Okay.
And so that little carved man, see it at the end there? Little Padamanusia.
Yeah.
He's the philosopher. He said that a boy carved that outside his hospital window. He brought it off him. So that was one of the first presents he gave me. Yeah, so anyway, then as I say, so his mother had died. I've got a photo. There is a photo of him with his sisters and him in uniform. But at that stage, so his mother must have died before he went back to Holland, before he went to Indonesia, because his father remarried. His father married again, and they none of them liked her. And Elizabeth, of course, lived with her. She was all right to Elizabeth, I think. But when he got back to Holland after being in Indonesia, he couldn't get out quick enough. So Bob Hartman, I think he was quite close to Bob Hartman's. Oh, that's right. He went out with Bob's sister Betty, and Bob Hartman's applied for a job on there was a little coaster being built in Holland for the Hokitika Shipping Company. And you can pull that door too if you want to, if you're feeling cool.
Oh, fun.
So anyway, Bob managed to get a job on this. It was only a 12-man. And Bob managed to get on a job on it as a mate. And the only job left was the cook's job. So Bob's mother very quickly taught Martin how to make bread and all sorts of things. He applied for the job, and he was taken on for 3 months trial, and he went on a boat that went all around Cork and Ireland and all that stuff as a trial cook. And I think he had a natural ability, Martin, cooking. But he did quite well. But when he got back, they said, well, the other guy's a better cook than you, but he was seasick all the time, so you've got the job. So he got the job of the cook on this, what's the name of it? Yeah.
So they sailed it out.
So it
From Holland to here.
came out from Holland via Tahiti. I've got photos there in Tahiti, out to here. And it came to Wellington. And it was supposed to go from Wellington to Hokitika. It never did get to Hokitika, we found out. Well, I think we found out years later. But it never did get there because the Hokitika sandbar
Oh, okay.
never let it
Silted
in.
up. Yeah.
And that's a story in itself, because, do you want me to jump there?
Yeah.
Because years later, when we did the 6 weeks camping trip around the South Island with the kids in January 1975, we got to Hokitika, and the camping trailer broke its shaft, and Martin we limped into Hokitika, set up camp, because we had a big tent, and Martin went to look for an engineering place to fix it. And so he told these guys the story, and they remembered. They remembered this ship, little boat that was supposed to come there very well. And so he said to them, "Oh, I'll take you out for a drink. You know, I'll go take the trailer back. We set it up. I'll meet you. I'll take you out for a drink after work." So he went and met them, took them out for a drink, and they invited us back after dinner to the pub. Well, Martin had always heard about these pubs in the West Coast being open until 10 o'clock at night, so, you know, that was his dream to experience this. So we went back, and they were just delightful. So we ended up staying. They closed the doors at 10 o'clock, but we were still there.
Yeah.
But then they invited us to their place, and they took us to those glowworm caves over there. I've never heard about them since or anything, but we went there. They took us to these glowworm caves out of Hokitika somewhere, and then they took us home and they pulled out these white bait out of the freezer, and they made us white bait fritters at about 12 o'clock at night. So we had a wonderful experience in Hokitika. So that sort of finished the story of that ship. Yeah. It never ever got there. Anyway, so they landed in Wellington, and so they got the train to Auckland. There were 3 of them that stuck together. There was Job Hoffman, Maraka, his wife, came to the party the other day, but she was here early. She and I are still good friends. She lives on Waiheke. And Bob Hartman is still alive, but he's got Alzheimer's. Job and Maraka separated, and Job's back in Holland. Yeah, so they came up here, and he got a job, Martin got a job with at an engineering company as a fitter. He trained in, you know, that's another thing that really brassed him off about Holland. After he got back from the war, he'd been doing, you know, like studying and things and engineering at this college, and he was assessed after he got out of the army for a job, and they told him that he'd only be fit for a factory. Oh, anyway, so they came out here, got a job with B.J. Johnson and Sons that were at the bottom of the Parnell Rise, and he couldn't. Oh, and they lived. The 3 of them lived. If you go, you know Grafton Bridge.
Yeah.
Well, if you go from the hospital side, just at the beginning of the Grafton Bridge is a big old house. It's still there, they've kept it. On the other side is a big motel thing. But there used to be a house like that on this side, a big old boarding house. And they had a huge great big room that the three of them shared. That's where they lived when I first met them. And I actually went up there once. That was where he gave me that card. Anyway, so he worked for B. Johnson and Sons, and he said he used to write home and say that the boss took him out on the boat. He said they didn't believe him because, and you called the boss Bill. Oh, well, you can imagine Holland, you know, or overseas, you know New Zealand now. In those days, no, you didn't do those sort of things. That was rubbish. But of course you did, because we were all. So he worked there. He was working there for quite a few years, I think. And then, as I say, when I and then Job, then that he took me. Job and Maraka were living in Birkenhead. And they had a little flat and they had a baby. And he took me over there to visit them one time when their baby was just new. And then later on they got a big old house to rent just next door to where they were living, and they invited Bob and Martin to share it with them. So in those days there was no harbour bridge. Excuse me, but there was a vehicular ferry from Birkenhead, you see.
Oh, okay.
So, they went over there. So when we started going out together, they were living there. The first thing that we ever went to, like that, when I got contact, like we saw each other in Waiheke, and so we had phone numbers or something. So my mother and I used to go to the ballet, and I used to go in early in the morning and stand in the queue at His Majesty's Arcade waiting for the tickets. And she would get Robert off to school and then come in and take over from me while I went to work. Anyway, this particular time, a girlfriend was coming with us, and I rang Martin up because New Zealand men didn't go to ballets. But I thought, this man's got a bit of culture, you see. So I invited him to the ballet, which he came. So that was the first time we actually ever went out together in Auckland. Then he and Bob, in those days, of course, there were no restaurants, If you went out, you ate at a hotel or a grill room. The very first restaurant we ever had in Auckland was the High Little Griddle, which was around the end of K Road, just before Ponsonby Road there. The second one that opened was Californian Foods. And not many people remember this, no, unless you went there you wouldn't remember. But Martin and Bob got a job as a waiter in the evenings. For part in their extra, they worked a couple of nights each in this tiny little place. And Mr. Lewis had worked in California. He was a New Zealander, but he worked in California for years. Came back and opened this wee restaurant. It was just down Eden Terrace. And Morrison's big funeral parlour, just on the corner of New North Road and Eden Terrace. Still on the corner. And just down there on New North Road there, he opened this wee place. There was a queue of people outside that place every night. And Martin took me there. Twice, I think, we went there on his night off. And we'd stand in the queue, and you'd go in and sit down, and they gave you a glass of water. Well, this was big time for us. We didn't have restaurants, but nobody else gave you a glass of water. How sophisticated was that? And then you got in. And
so how old were you both? You both roughly the same
I
age?
was 21 when I met him.
Okay. And Martin was?
Martin was 4 years older.
Okay.
So we married when I was 23 and he was 27 and we got married. Yeah, so...
what year was that?
We were married on the 31st of March 1956. 56 years ago this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So, Yeah, we'd go in, and Mr. Lewis only ever had 4 things on the menu. It's fillet steak, might have been roast steak, hamburger steak, and spaghetti bolognese. That's all. And if any of those steaks came and they weren't up to scratch, they went back and they went on the menu that night. And his wife made these gorgeous big berry pies. And when they ran out, and that was that, you know.
Mm.
But boy, it was good. And there was a very famous, very well-known shoe shop in Vulcan Lane, which was very, very upmarket, John Greer. And he used to go there for dinner every night. I guess it was the only decent place you could eat a decent meal.
So, you know, at that time in Auckland, in the city,
Yep.
well, you know, were there parts of the city that were sort of rougher than other parts? Down by the
course.
wharf, was the pubs around there a bit rugged? Or was it, you know, was it quite a friendly place, or?
Oh, it was, I mean, I got around all over it. So there were, excuse me, let me think, where was, yeah, it was, the downtown part now, which is where the Queen Elizabeth Square, opposite Britomart and all the rest of it. I mean, I worked upstairs down there at one stage. That was all the shops, and that was okay. They had some quite decent shops. And the rough parts, where were the rough parts?
Usually you find that
Yeah,
a port,
yeah,
the pubs around,
yeah.
around the port.
Yeah, well, of course there were. Let me think. God, I have to think back on
There wouldn't be a lot of cars around in those days either. Was it mostly trams and
There
buses?
were trams went up and down Queen Street and Hobson Street, and the buses went from the bus terminal, which is where the Britomart place is now, in the old GPO, the old post office, which I worked in once, was at the back there, the old bus terminal. The old pubs were actually, I think, more, I have to think about it. I know that it'll
It's okay,
come.
I'm just trying
It's
to
just,
sort of
I'm just
get
at
a
the moment
picture
I
of all.
can't. I'm just trying to think.
So you got married in '56, and
Yeah.
Leslie was born in '59, was she?
Yeah, it was 2 years, 9 months after we got married. She was born.
And then Lane 2 years later, a year later?
A year and 8 months later, Lane. Because I expected to have the baby exactly when I'd planned it, and it didn't happen the first time for Leslie.
So
Oh!
did you always plan on having 4 kids, or?
I always wanted 4 children, 2 of them.
And Martin was quite happy with that plan as well?
No, he was once he had his son, that was it. And I said, oh no, it isn't, thank you, I want 4. So we had 3, Anna was 2 years and 9 months, I think, was it? 2 years and something months after Lane. And I thought, because we were pretty poor, on a teacher's salary by that stage, you know, pretty poor at that stage.
Where were you living?
Well, that wasn't very right. You've jumped.
Oh, yeah,
years.
so, yeah.
Do you want me to do it or not? I mean, do you want
Well,
me to go
no,
back? Or is it too much?
No,
Oh.
just
Okay.
whatever. I'm
Okay.
just
So,
wanting-
okay. No, I just didn't know how much filling you wanted to know. You'll just cut it the way you
come
want
back
to.
and forward.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. So anyway, so then Martin and I went out together. And the following, so by the time I was 22, we went on a trip together, but before we were engaged or anything. In fact, he asked me to marry him three times before I ever said yes, because I was planning to go to England. Joan Gregory and I were going to England together, and I was saving up. So no, there was no way I was, and but anyway, as I say, we went out a few times together, and then the following Christmas, he and Bob bought this Studebaker coupe, so he and I did this trip, and the thing that always tickled him about New Zealand roads was you'd come to a one-lane bridge. I don't know, for some reason or other, he was always tickled pink about this one-lane bridge. Always amused him. And because it was all rough roads. And we took off and we went right round the Coromandel and right down the east coast. You can imagine how rough those roads were up over the Coromandel and down the east coast. And we slept at the back of the Studebaker coupe. And we stayed with my aunt in Napier, and by the time we came across left there, we got to Rotorua, and we could either stay a night somewhere or go to the Waitomo Caves. That's all the money we had. I think we had a tin of sardines and some biscuits or something to finish. So yeah, I've still got the map that we did that trip on, believe it or not. So that would have been the Christmas.
So was that frowned on, going away together before you were married?
Oh, well, it wasn't really on, but I didn't really care.
So Mum didn't have an issue with it?
Oh, she couldn't do much. There's one thing I'll say about my mother. You see, because I suppose we were apart a lot of the time, and I know she would have worried herself sick a lot of the time too about me, but she was very liberal. And boy, I valued that, and our kids were brought up in the same way. We were very liberal with them. I always, I'd say it to you, I got around the city on my own at age 8. You can't suddenly put, limits on somebody who'd had that much freedom. And so I've always valued that. She was never stupid about it. And I think she just trusted me. And I always said to my kids, I never ever said to them, be home at 10 o'clock. I said, just use your brains. Don't come 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Because and they were pretty good. They never, yeah. So anyway, we went on this trip together. As I say, that was great. And anyway, as I say, he asked me. So in the end I said, well, because his father, you see, and sisters were still in Holland, but his father had married this awful woman that he couldn't stand. And then they got divorced and then they got remarried again. So all respect for him went down. He had no respect for his father at all because of all this. As I say, I think it was during the war where he sort of seemed to lose respect for people. Anyway, so he asked me again, and I said, okay, well, by this time Joan had pulled out of going to England. So I said, all right, so we'll go together then. I said, we'll go together and I'll see you. Of course, we never did. We never had the money. So anyway, we got engaged at Easter of 1955. And my mother wasn't very rapt about it, I know. I came home and showed her the diamond ring. And don't think she wouldn't have chosen him. But then again, the guy she did choose for me, I didn't want to marry him. He was a boy, he was a guy that I went out with on and off for years, but he sort of bored me silly. As I say about Martin, I thank God I was never bored.
But, Betty warmed to him over a period
of
time.
God, he was a wonderful son-in-law.
Yeah, and George and
they got on.
Martin always got on.
Yeah. But he was a wonderful son-in-law. He used to come and later years come and cook them a meal once a week. He was fantastic too.
Hello.
There's Leslie. Hello.
You can join in.
Lovely day.
You can come and
Hello.
join in.
Oh, you're very colourful.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
You're not going to sneak in on us, are you?
This is what Karen brought me back from America.
Gorgeous.
Joe's Crab Shack.
Here we go.
So anyway, So I, by this time Martin had, so he, so we got engaged. And I said, by the way, I told you, we said he was hopeless with money. But he had borrowed money off Bob's mother to come out here, even though they worked their way out, but he didn't have any. So I said he still owed her some money. And I said to him, I will marry you with no money, but I won't marry you while you're in debt. So it took a year. So that's why we planned to get married a year later. We got married in 1956. So, so he paid that off. And of course I had some money from saving up to go to England. And I'd paid £20 deposit on the Rangitoto to go, and we got that deposit back, and I bought that big camphor wood box in my bedroom for £22.10 from a Chinese shop, with the money that I got back. Anyway, I also had a bit of savings because I think it was before we got married. No, maybe, I don't know, it was, anyway, we were, excuse me, we got married, anyway, in the March 31st.
In a church? In a church? Where did you get married?
No, we got married in St. Sepp, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, at the top of Kaiba Pass Road, on the left-hand side, which is now a Polynesian church, isn't it, Leslie? You know?
I don't know.
It's, I started going to the big hall, they had a big hall behind. I started going to the dances there when I was 16. St. Sepp's was a big time dance place, always the younger crowd.
Martin danced?
Yeah, but I taught him to dance mostly.
He was a good dancer?
He was a head good fun. But he always said that I taught him.
So this was like
waltzes
and ballroom dancing?
Yeah, but we also lived through the rock and roll era.
Okay.
And I was, well, Leslie will tell you, we danced at Martin and I danced at every party.
Yeah.
And we did all our married life. And that was one of the things I missed most about him when we separated.
So, in the 50s you'd be listening to Buddy Holly and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we were very much into, oh no, actually I'm not sure where. Well, let me think. I grew up and danced. I went to 3 dances a week.
Yeah.
In my 16 I started going to St. Sepp's. All my teenage and early 20s I went to dances. Early 20s.
I was
three times a week I went to dances. And it was big band stuff. It was big band stuff.
So I always think
it was all the gorgeous old
Herb Albert and Glenn
no,
Miller.
that was a bit
Glenn
later.
Miller.
That was what we danced to at parties later on.
Oh, yeah.
But it was Glenn Miller stuff.
Yeah, big band.
And the big band stuff.
Sid Lawrence.
No, I don't know him, but
Okay.
but it was all. And I've got stuff there that we've danced to at different places.
Yeah, I grew up with all that music. 'Cause
Oh.
my parents were dancing.
Yes, that's right. They were dancers.
So,
they were
pretty
ballroom
much.
dancers.
Yeah.
I never actually learned dancing. I was a natural dancer, and when I looked into ballroom dancing, it would never appeal to me because it was too. You do this. Everybody
Too
does the
tough,
steps together, and your mother and I poked our heads in a daytime dance when we were going past one day, over in England, and she'd gone there, and everybody did the same thing, and I couldn't stand that. That would not have been my thing. George was a fabulous dancer, by the way. His grandfather
Is that
was
right?
a wonderful dancer.
Where the hell did the genes go with me then?
I don't know.
He was a very, very
Skipped
good
generation.
dancer. Yeah.
That's amazing, hey?
Andy's got two
And mother wasn't a good dancer. Mother wasn't as good a dancer as he was, because Pat Facey used to dance with him quite a bit.
You know, my parents were British champions ballroom dancing.
Really?
I knew they were dancing. I didn't know they were British.
They were in a formation team that won the British Championship.
Oh, okay, well,
Wow.
I mean, I've got photos of them.
And I've got 2 left feet.
That's
James
it.
can dance, can't he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Yes, as I say, I was going to. And interestingly enough, even when we got engaged, because I'd been going out with a guy, Leo Vitale, before Martin came on the scene, and Leo went away in a yacht up to the islands. And, I didn't get there. But when I got engaged, I went up to the Orange with my ring on, because Martin used to work, down the little California Foods at night. So I used to go to dances anyway. He was never jealous. And so I went up there with the ring on this night, and Leo came up to the thing, and he said, "Oh, it looks like I'm too late." Yeah. So anyway, we got married, and and he he'd gone from B. Johnson and Sons, and then he was working for the Colonial Ammunition Company. He went from a fitter, B. Johnson and Sons, he became a fitter and turner. He went to Colonial Ammunition Company as a tool maker. And he worked there, he was working there in our marriage years, and we had a little bed sitting room in Birkenhead. The house is still there, 46 in Emoa Street, just up from the wharf. We had a tiny, honestly, well, it was 11 feet by 11 feet. It had had a little over thing like that, you know, like 3 foot wide thing out, veranda thing, you know, 3 foot wide veranda, which they'd closed in for a kitchenette. So it was a little gas stove up on that at the time. There was a kitchen bench, and we had a folding table that fitted there. We had a cupboard that sat there, and at the end of that, 11 feet by 3 that was, you know, with the windows out. At the end of that was a door that went onto the rest of that veranda thing, but that wasn't covered in, and it had a fire escape down. And you looked out right out to over to the harbour bridge being built. Oh.
So you actually watched the harbour?
We did. I've got a whole set. I've got a whole set of the photos if you want them. Of colour slides of them, of it. Martin had a little old motorbike that he used to go to. He had to go to work on Saturday mornings.
What sort of motorbike it was?
No,
Yeah.
I can show you. I can show you photos.
Yeah.
I can show you photos of it. No, he went to work and he took a whole set of colour slides of the bridge being built. Yeah. And so
was that the early 60s?
No, it opened in 59.
59, yeah.
She was 6 months old. It opened on the 29th of May 1959.
How many years did it take to build?
I'm not sure about that.
Must have been quite a few years, eh?
Not sure about that. Anyway, so yeah, we lived in that little bed. When we got that bed sitting room, I thought, oh God, you know, it'll do until we find something else. But in actual fact, we were quite happy in it.
Do you have a TV?
It was tight. No,
That's
TV
why I had
wasn't
four-
even in
that's
the
why I-
country. at
That's
that
why I had
stage.
4 kids then, there's nothing else to do.
No, we didn't have kids in that place.
No,
No, that was much later. No, I always wanted 4 kids, I told you that.
Yeah, I know.
I'd always wanted 2 boys and 2 girls. And so anyway, we ended up living there for 2 years because it was cheap, you see, and we could save a bit of money. But around the road, in Tizard Road, which was the road facing the Chelsea Sugar Works, there were some sections, and it was a land that had been surveyed 50 years before. And we ended up, I had some money, as I say. Oh, by the way, I paid for the honeymoon to Good Martin, because I had.
Where did you go on honeymoon?
Well, we went up to Russell. We
okay.
hired a
Yeah.
flat up there for 2 weeks. We went up by bus, got married on Easter Saturday, and went up by bus. And the couple that owned the house met us, and you know, oh, they were lovely. And we had this lovely, they had a crayfish on the table for us for dinner, and everything. It was lovely. And yeah, so we saw Russell, and then yeah, as I say, we lived in. Oh, and that's right. We found these sections around the road, and one section was quite a nice place that had been sold, and Yopa Maraka bought that. But our section was the original, but it tended to go down the gully, but it was covered in lovely bush. By the way, that section has never been built on.
Really?
It's still there, and we paid £350 for it. And I put £50 deposit on it, and we paid it off over probably 10 years, I think, because we sold it when we were going to build the house in Fisher Terrace, and I think the rates were £9 a year, and we made £700 clear profit on it. So it was very good savings, actually. Had we had the money in the bank, we would have used it, because we were very, very poor, because Martin decided, well, let's go back a little bit. When after we got married, Robert, of course, was 11 and a half years younger than me. He used to go swimming to the Eastern Suburb Swimming Club, which was in the Tepid Baths, every Sunday morning. And Martin was a very good swimmer, and he used to go in. We used to go in together, and he used to help teach. And he also started doing the life saving. So he got his life saving medal, and I've got all his medals and things. And, started doing all those, and he started doing life saving with the kids. And I said to him, "You're wasting your time working in a factory. You should be working with kids." So at that stage, my mother knew somebody from round here who was doing a woodworking course at training college, and it was a year. You had to be qualified in whatever field you were in, but it was a year's course at training college to learn how to be a teacher. And so he tossed up between swimming coach and teacher, and so he applied and didn't get it the first year. We'd hoped to get it, but anyway, we decided to try for a baby. And so the year after Leslie was born, she was born in December, and he got accepted for the course the next year. So he went to training college for a year.
So did he get paid for that?
Yes, but it dropped. I mean, I was getting good money as a dress designer.
Yeah.
He was getting good money as a tool maker, and he dropped to half of what he was earning.
To go teaching.
To be a teacher, and it was tight. It was very tight. But when I became pregnant with Leslie, we needed a bigger place, so we got a flat just down Harbourview Road, which is now called Bridgeview Road, in Birkenhead. Just below where we were living, and we got these two front rooms. It was a bedroom and a living room with a shared bathroom in between. And the back of the house, the owners lived at the house behind, the Prescotts, and their daughter and son-in-law and children lived in the house at the back, and they moved out. The daughter and they moved on to somewhere, and so the Prescotts asked us if we would move back, and we said we can't afford any more money. And they said, no, we want you to live there, same price that you. So they were lovely to us. They were just really lovely, and so we lived there for 2 years too. So we were in Birkenhead for 4 years.
And then where did you go from there?
And then we went to Whangarei, because that was Martin's,
that's right.
Martin's first teaching job was Whangarei Boys High.
And what was he teaching there?
He was teaching engineering.
Engineering.
He was an engineer. Teaching engineering, technical drawing, plus in the 9 years he taught maths and God knows what else. Teachers always get blended with everything that's going, But he loved it. And I went up. When we went up there, I said, God, this is the smallest I ever want to go. And it had just become a city, 20,000, the smallest. So, I never fancied small, but he loved it. And I did. I was very happy up there. We loved it. That's when we went up there with a 1-year-old, and we had our three more children up there.
All born in Whangarei.
Yeah, 3 youngest were all born in Whangarei. And as I said I got to you last time and said we had Anna, and I started to think, maybe that had better be the last one, because we didn't have any money. So there was, so Mark was as Doris going always used to say, you always have to allow for one mistake. And I always wanted 4 anyway. So, to start with I was very upset, and Martin wasn't. But after Lane was born, Martin said, that's it, got my son. And I said, oh, no, it's not. I want 4.
You haven't got to say
So I
this,
had my
mate.
4.
You haven't got to say this, had he? Really?
Well, yeah, but he did. But anyway.
Can you, because the DVD that we're going to be doing is
It's
about...
going to run out.
No, that'll go for hours.
Oh, well,
Is about, and I'm probably not going to be
Yeah.
using this. This is just sort of getting information, really. Can you remember, because the first, with George coming over here in the 40s, there was no real physical contact between the two families until Bob went to England in 19...
No, but Ida Gould that I mentioned to you played our piano.
Yeah.
Her husband had been in the Navy, had been in the Navy too. She was a great pianist, and they lived around Whitehaven Road. She was going back to England, because they were English. She was going back to England, and George gave her Harry's contact.
Okay.
That's how he got contact with Graham.
So that's how we got back in touch
That's
with
how
my
he got
dad.
there. He got in touch with, I think
Can you
it
remember
was
what year this was?
Ooh, good question. I think that
Guesstimate?
well, I'm picking by the photos and things that came out that Graham was older, obviously. I mean, he was adult,
Was he married by then?
I'm not sure that he,
So
not sure, I'm
They
not
got
sure.
married in 53, so probably the early 50s.
It might have been,
Yeah. So
it might have been, yeah.
you can obviously remember Bob deciding to go to England. What
Oh
was it-
yeah,
what
well
was all that
he
about?
went at 21. Oh well, I think, you know,
Just wanted to do an
he
OE.
wanted to do his OE, and Roger Jones. I've got a photo of the party that they had. It was taken up at the Joneses, which was just up the top there, the house just below the dentist on the corner there. Roger the Joneses owned that place, and then I can remember going to that party. Yeah, and they were going. They
So
were
what
going.
year was Bob born?
Robert was born in 1944.
So it would have been
So it would have
65,
been 65.
1965 when he went to England.
Yeah, it was just. Oh no, that was Robert's. Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. I'm getting mixed up with his 20. I'm sure he went when he. Yeah, I'm sure he was 21 when he went.
It was around that time, huh?
We came down from Whangarei to his 21st birthday, and but it must have, because Mark was born 3 days after Robert's birthday. So I can remember we came down, so he might have had it a bit before, I can't remember, but it was awfully close, I know. We came down. That party of the Joneses, you have to ask Robert when he went.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I got photographs
Yeah.
of Robert in England
Yeah,
when
that's
I
right.
would have been
Yeah.
6 or 7 or 8,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to sit down and talk to Bob as well.
Yes.
A bit of information on
Yeah.
if I can pin him down.
So yes. But I was very disappointed that he packed up and came home so soon.
He wasn't there
I
very long
couldn't
at all, was he?
believe he wasn't. It was dull, and he said he got sick of going to work in the dark and coming home in the dark.
I know the feeling.
You know.
Was he there in the winter time only?
Yeah,
or
well.
I think he had a girl over here before he left as well.
Oh, and he got pregnant. Oh, no, wait a minute.
No.
No, he came back and got pregnant. Did
He came back and his girlfriend that he came back for.
he? That
this
was
is-
the one that got pregnant?
Don't know about that. But
Yeah.
he told me a story where, which I'll talk to Bob and we'll get it
Yeah.
right, where he came back because he was missing his girlfriend, and when he got back she was with somebody else, or the relationship ended. Or
Oh, I think it was Anne that had the baby.
could have been.
Is that
had
David?
David. You have to check with him on that.
Yeah.
But he
Well,
did. He
can you
was
remember the year
going with
David
that.
was born?
No.
Maybe mid
No, but when
it
when I was,
it could be.
it
Dates are
probably
about
was her. She was an Australian girl
Okay.
because I don't think he was here when she had the baby. But
Because
maybe
that was
she
the-
was. But I know my mother went up to see her in the hospital when she had David, and my mother came back. My mother. This is typical. My mother. Oh no, it wasn't Robert's. I'd have felt something if it had been his.
It's a good way to get around
Anyway,
it.
20 years later, he came and looked them up. And 20 years later was when I was overseas. Now, when we were overseas, that's right, it was when we were in
Oh.
Malaysia, I think. Was it? No. Yes, it would have been. No, it wasn't.
Can't
No,
be. That was
that was too soon.
72,
No, it was when I was
73.
overseas. I know I came back and Mother said that David had come and found them, or rung them, or been in touch with them, and they'd sent him off to Wellington to find Robert. Robert was in Wellington
So
at the time.
what was
It was when I was overseas.
what was your mother's reaction? Do you remember?
Oh no, she wasn't very upset about it. No. I think she was. Yeah.
Because when Bob came to England in the early mid 60s, that was the first physical contact between the two families
That's right.
for
Yeah. But
20 odd years.
Ida Gould brought back. She actually met, you know, whether it was Uncle Harry. She met somebody over there anyway, and she got in touch with
and
Graham.
then the letters started
They got,
going.
yeah, that's right. Graham kept.
Because as a kid growing up, we used to get a magazine called New Zealand Monthlies. It was specifically printed here to send to friends overseas, and it had a kids page on it, you know, children's page, and that's
I think I vaguely remember it. How would I remember it from somewhere?
There was something like that when I went over.
Granddad George used to send it, post it to us every month. And I
Oh,
couldn't
okay.
wait for it to arrive.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's what sort of gave me the New Zealand fascination from being a kid, because of the big pictures of the Pukaki rocks and
Right.
Russell.
It would have been so foreign and so
so far away
fascinating
because you
and-
just didn't see anything in those days in New Zealand. So
Except there was an awful lot of English people came out.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's what it was probably printed for.
Yes,
You know,
it would have been.
Deliberately
Would have
printed
been.
to send
That's right.
over there.
Yeah.
So and then when Bob came out, I remember meeting somebody from New Zealand, and because I was only about between 6 and 8 years old.
Right.
Got photographs of it, and that was pretty intriguing. And we used to play and wrestle and roll around and have a ball. But yeah, he wasn't there very long, was he?
No, he wasn't very happy there.
And then the next contact would have been
When you came
no,
out?
1973
70,
or 4.
74 I think it was.
Yeah,
I've
could have
actually
been.
got Mother's diary, if you're interested.
I can get those dates. Yeah.
I've got her diary.
Have
I've got
you?
the whole thing.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Put it on the pile. I've got a pile there to take that to town.
Well,
I'm going to scan them.
now wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, there might be things in there that might.
Yeah, I'll be careful. Yeah, we don't.
She might have said something tactless.
Yes. Wait a minute.
No.
It's somewhere handy.
No, don't worry about that.
No, I'll find it for you. No, because you'll be interested in it.
So in 1973, 74,
74 I think it was.
they came out
Yeah.
to England, and that was the first time I met my granddad, and the first time my father and his father
That's
got
right.
together since my dad
Since he was a little boy.
3 or 4 years old,
Yeah. 4 was it?
something like that.
Yeah.
I've got photographs of him and his together.
Since who was 4 years old?
My dad.
Graham,
Oh,
granddad's
but
son.
he'd seen, yeah.
I don't think
Wow.
I've seen that photo, have
You will do. It'll be on the DVD when it's finished.
I? I haven't seen that photo.
So what I'm going to try to do is to ignore that, just pretend it's not here.
Yeah.
What I'm going to try to do is make a DVD that starts with one family and starts with another family,
Right,
and then brings them together and tie a bit of
Right.
history and photographs and video
right.
and a little bit of this in,
Yeah.
and music too. So
Yeah,
we need
that's
music. And
Okay.
Helen's got some music there that I'm going to look through. That
Yeah,
she's
no,
gonna
I need
like.
to sort
But
it
I need
out.
suggestions from you guys, and any, if you've got even half a dozen striking photographs that you really like, let me have them, because I've got probably between 100 and 200 hours of work, and I've already started it.
Have a look at the book that Chrissy did for $50. And put Anne and Fiona on the front cover. It's lovely.
It's a lovely
It is lovely,
photo.
but she didn't bother to check with me who was family or who wasn't. But it is a lovely photo. And
Oh,
and
Chrissy
it's-
put this together.
yeah.
Oh,
And
gosh.
sent it off and put it together, and I had to pay $50 for it. But it is a lovely book.
Oh.
Lovely photo.
Oh, it is nice.
She just
Isn't
took-
got
she-
some
remember
good
she just
photos?
click, click, click,
She
click,
just
click.
went around and...
Clicked all over the place. And then,
Amanda, she did a bit of her family tree,
right,
and she wrote it all down,
right.
and she sent it off and had it made into a book.
You can
Yeah.
do them now, a lot of places. John's Photo
So
Fancy
she's
is doing
got part of her, because she's got a lot of Matata and
Right.
Whakatane is where
Who's
a lot
this?
of it. Amanda,
Joe's
a
friend.
friend of
Oh, right.
ours.
Yep, yep.
So, but her
Yeah.
family obviously was from England, and then
Right.
came over to New Zealand, and
Yeah.
she's got quite a lot of history, and there's a lot about
Yeah,
them
quite.
in the history.
It would be nice to have one of just the family. You know.
Well, I think I can switch that off because we're pretty much
Yes.
up to date, aren't we? It was all the really old stuff that's,
Well, you're not up to date.
well,
So we've got to try and
You
find out when George
yeah, I've got that written down.
and Pat divorced.
Gosh.
And the marriage date of George and Betty.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know that at all.
That'll be easy for you to find.
Well,
And then, of course,
Leslie, there's a record.
and then then I want to talk about George.
George,
I want to talk about George
go for it.
because we haven't got to any of that yet.
Go for it.
Yeah. No.
yeah, we need to talk about
No.
Snapfish.
Yeah. No, I just.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great
it. That is
photos.
it. Snapfish. That's what she
Snapfish.
did hers through. Snapfish.
Aren't these some great photos?
They are. There are some good photos. Yeah. So yeah, my memories of them, of him. He was always a lovely man. He was a lovely stepdad to me.
Yeah.
And he was, and little things that you remember. Like, for instance, I asked my father, because my father and my father, did you want me to finish that bit of
Yeah,
bit
go for
about
it.
my
Yeah.
home? Remember I told you that my father went to the war and met my stepmother, because she was sent over in the New Zealand Army too. Over in 1942, I think it was, they sent over these office women to take over the office work from the soldiers, you see. So Betty was from Auckland, Betty Brown, was in the army, went over to Italy, and my father and she met. And they came back on the same ship together, and then he asked her to marry him. And so they got married when I was 15. When I was 16, my dad, they were, at that stage, he was still living in Dunedin. He had this cycle, this shop or something. And he invited me down, he shouted me down there for the Christmas holidays. So that was the first time I met Betty. And so I was down there for a couple of years. And then, when I was 18, I had a boyfriend, Jack. Jack and my cousin from Christchurch had been up, and when I was 7, and the two, Jack and Des, and I went down for the Canterbury Christchurch centenary, the 50th, the 100th year centenary. And we went down and stayed with Auntie Dot, and my dad came up. I was 18 at that stage. My dad came up to see me at Auntie Dot's and said that they'd just had a baby girl. So I have a half sister who now lives in.
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got her. She's 18 years younger than me. I see her now and again at my stepmother's place. Anyway, when Raywin was about, I'm not sure how old she was. Might have been about 8 or something. They shifted to Auckland. Well, we lived in Monterey Street, so Mother and George lived here. We lived in Monterey Street, and my mother and stepmother lived there. We were in a triangle from each other. Yeah, so that's why I told you about the photo of the 5 of us, They always came over on my birthday and all the rest of it. Yeah, so
So what year did you move to Monterey Street?
we moved down to there at the end of 1968.
Wow.
We were
Did
there.
you have that built? Was it new?
No. Oh God, no. Hated that house.
Didn't you like it?
I didn't like it at all because we had built a lovely house in Whangarei that faced the sun, was a lovely big house. Oh, it was just lovely. And
I've got
we
fond memories
were
of that.
only in it for 3 years. We had to sell it and come down here because Martin was talked into getting a job at the job at Selwyn College. So we came down, and I didn't like that house at all. My kids liked it because it was their sort of mainstay of house, wasn't it, growing up? But no, I didn't like it. It didn't face the sun. It irritated me.
That was my retreat.
Anyway, eh?
That was my retreat.
Yeah,
if I wanted
that's
to get
right.
out of
That's
here.
right. That's
Well,
right. You did. Yeah.
Used to
No,
wander
no.
down.
Yeah.
Bloody dogs barking at me all the way.
I
There was
can
a few
always
rough
remember.
houses between here.
I always
Yeah,
always
well,
remember
behind
you
them.
standing there watching me do the Christmas mince pies and all the rest of it.
And the food.
And the food.
I used to have a meal
That's
here
right.
and run around there and get another one.
Yeah, so anyway, so we were in it for 2 years. Then Martin got the job in Saba. So Elizabeth and Albert and their 5 children arrived in New Zealand 2 weeks after we left to go to Saba. So we missed them, but they moved it straight into our house. And they lived in it for 5 months until they bought their own house in Te Atatu. And then it was rented out for the rest of the time we were away overseas.
So Elizabeth is...
Martin's younger sister.
And did any other family come out?
No, because the family, Nellie, the next one to him, the mother of aunts and Susie and Julia, they were in just 50 miles out of Adelaide when we left to go to Saba. So we went via there. We had 4 days with them, and so that was when we physically actually met up with them. They were on their way back to Holland in the February after that, so they came via Auckland, stayed in that house. 14 people were in that Monterey Street house, and Lane, I can remember, he was so green with envy. He so wanted to be home with them. And anyway, 14 of them stayed in that house I think they were there for a few weeks, weren't they? Not sure now. To ask Elizabeth that. And so they had a fabulous time in there.
So they went back to Holland on...
Then they went back to Holland.
And then they came back again?
No. Susie came out in 1981, the first time. That was when she gave me that wee tiny photo up there next to it, because she called me a second mum. She came out for a trip because she was working for KLM.
Oh, okay.
And she loved it. And she went back to Holland, and Nellie, I remember Nellie writing to me and saying, I think Susie will end up in New Zealand. She said she loves the place, you know. And so then Nellie was killed in 1982. Days before, just before Susie and Nance's birthdays. She was out on a cycle shopping, and the truck beside her didn't see her and ran over. So Susie came back again in 83, and that was when we all went camping together, remember? We did that big trip in the Coromandel, stayed with Dawn and Tony, and then went down to Rotorua, and then she, I was, and at that stage I was in my little 1-bedroom flat in St Heliers waiting for this house to be built. And Susie stayed with me there, she was here. And so, so then she came back again with a boyfriend, with Peter, because that time Lane was with Lizzie. But then Lizzie went back, Lizzie left in 84. I shifted in here only August. So she must have left before. Yeah. She left I think she left in the May 84 to go to Sydney. Because we've got her farewell, I think Martin gave her a farewell party. Well, we had a party round at your father's flat, round the McDonald Street in Ellerslie. And Lizzie went to Sydney after that. She left.
So how did aunts finish up out here? Was that after
Susie came out again when I was overseas. She brought Peter out here in the hopes that he would fall in love with the place. And he didn't. You met him and I didn't. I've got a photo of him. But no, he didn't like it. So I was away, would have been over the summer of 88. Because I went away in 87 and came back. I went away July 87, came back the end of June 88. She brought him out. And then, no, but aunts came out in 87. They came out in the beginning of 87. Before
I don't know how you remember these dates.
Oh, I've got a good memory for dates. I just always do.
You know, the date she's been reading enough of this has been running for about 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours.
Now, Aunts and John came out in the beginning of 1987, before I went away.
How come Auntie's got
And
such a
then-
good New Zealand accent? She's got no Dutch accent.
Because they-
She grew up in
They grew up in Australia.
Oh, that's right, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't go to Holland until she was 15, I think.
She was born in Holland,
Yeah.
but she was just a little. She and Mario were born in Holland, and the other three were born in Australia.
Because Martin never lost his little Dutch accent, did he?
Yeah,
ever?
a little bit of an
And then, yes, so then, as I say, and then when I got back, the next year, the following year, Julia and Danny arrived 3 weeks before I got back.
Oh.
They met me at the airport, the first time I'd met them, physically, you see.
I'll tell you, you haven't told us much about Saba.
Oh, Saba. Saba was wonderful.
It'll take another 3 hours.
Oh, God, I loved it.
It was
Martin applied for the job because the relief job he'd taken at Selwyn College, Ken Rouse had got that Saba job. So we'd heard about it when we came, you know. So it came up and Martin applied for, first of all he applied for Philippines, Mindanao, and he didn't get that one. But then he applied for this one that Ken Rouse was on. And we got 8 weeks' notice. That was a mad, crazy rush because it was coming up, you know, here we were going to go to the tropics. We had to think of clothes. Well, I never bought clothes for my children. I made everything, made my own, made kids' clothes. But for the first time ever, I went to Woolworths and Farmers, I think, and bought kids' clothes. Because the reason I never bought clothes was because somebody else might have the same thing, and I hated sameness, as you all know by me. This is why I never got bored with Martin. There was no boredom, no sameness, no things have always got to be different. So I'd never bought a child's dress or anything from them. But I went off and bought all these summer cotton clothes, because they had to be cotton to go to the tropics, you see. And I made some of my own. Although I went there in polyester. Those awful poly, you know, those
Crimpolene
dresses that were up to here.
So the kids had to go to
Photos of
school
those.
there?
Oh, well,
English-speaking school?
Leslie went to Saba College, which was English speaking. When we got there, Lane and Anna went to Government English Primary School. Leslie went to Saba College, and Mark couldn't because the year we got there, they'd just changed everything over to Malay. So he had to go to a little private
So Martin was
school.
fluent in that language anyway?
Was, but he didn't. But you didn't have to be. None of the other teachers were.
Okay.
But it was a huge advantage being able to speak the language.
Yeah.
Because, it was wonderful because he just, he just made friends. We had good friends that were, local. Well, they weren't locals. They were locals. The kids
Was it a big place? You know, where you were? Was it a city?
It was
town?
a city.
City.
It was a city. Yeah. Yeah, it was a city, and
Good housing and infrastructure, or
well,
was it a bit-
the house we got there, and the house they offered us was awful. It was we should have had like the Europeans always got better class houses. The one they offered us was a second class thing, and we wouldn't take it. And so we ended up being in the Borneo Hotel for a year. No,
a month.
For a month, waiting for a decent house. Whereas the others all came and they got these other big houses to live in. We were never offered one of those. I don't understand it. But anyway, because Dawn and Tony came after us, but all the others got those big houses.
Yeah.
Those big old colonial style houses
Yeah.
up in the hill. But we never, so we actually had to sit, and in the end we got so fed up with it, and so in the end the government rented a private house for us, and it wasn't a particularly nice house, was it?
Well,
It was
fine as far as we
It
were
was-
concerned.
yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
the kids were concerned.
It was up near the Astana, just below the palace, and it was
On the hill. It
handy.
was concrete. It was
It was a
concrete,
concrete,
wasn't it?
it was a
Big
concrete block place.
Still,
It was
on
owned
the
by
hill.
the Chinese people. They had this hideous black vinyl furniture in it.
Oh.
And when I moved in, you couldn't sit on vinyl in the tropics. It was a nightmare. So I had seen cane furniture and priced it. So I said to the owner, would he please buy some? And I said, this is how much it would cost. He said, is that all? So he actually bought it. Not this. I ordered this before we left. We bought this back new. So this is 40 years old.
You bought a car back as well, didn't you?
We did. Toyota Crown
wagon.
Station Wagon.
Yeah, I remember that car.
Gorgeous. And we actually had, we bought an old car, waiting for it, because we were allowed to buy a car duty free, interest free, and get it back duty free. Does that make sense? Is that right?
Yeah,
that sounds
right.
If you own the car for a period of
duties
time.
and
Yeah,
taxes
we could
in
have
those
2
days.
years to pay it off, so it was interest free loan and a duty free back car.
Because in those days, cars were very expensive.
They were.
Yes.
They were.
You
Huge
just-
So we-
import taxes and
That's right.
on everything.
Yeah.
But if you'd owned the car for a
Yeah.
certain period of time,
2 years.
overseas,
Yeah,
you could
that's
bring it
what-
back with
that's
no
right.
duty.
That's what it was. So of course we went there, and by the way, we went first class because Mark was under 6.
You
The
flew-
whole family was sent.
So you flew.
Flew.
Of course
First
we
class.
flew, but we were first class, and we were met because they had somebody like they had. So the toys we met just before we left. Dallas Toy was a woodworker. Martin was an engineer. So we met the toys before we left. So we knew that they were coming. The principal had been chosen, but at the last minute he hadn't taken the job. So they offered this job to this guy, John Godfrey, who was from Wellington, I think. And so we were going to be the first ones there. And because Martin spoke the language, he had to go down to Wellington to meet all these foreign affairs, people. And Martin was asked to be the first people, the first ones there, plus the first one to sort of welcome, and the first ones to meet people. So we went first class. We got met in Singapore by the High Commissioner. High Commissioner Carr met us. Carr's met us. We were put into the Lady Hill was it the Lady Hill? Yeah, Lady Hill Hotel, that's right, where we stayed. Well, the kids were in 7th heaven. They had a pool. They didn't have to go shopping very often. They were left with somebody, armors to look after them, And we went shopping, of course, and did, I bought all these things that you had to take, because I did take some linen with me, but we bought a dinner set and a cutlery set and God knows what in Singapore, to take with us. And so we had this fantastic time. Then we went to Sabah, and as I say, we stayed in the boarding hotel for a month, which wasn't really a hardship. But later on, we got the bill for all the food.
Oh.
We actually, at the time, we didn't know that.
Oh.
But it wasn't our fault we were stuck there. We just they didn't give us a house. But anyway, in that time,
Did you have to pay for the food, or did you?
no, I think we had to pay for we had to pay for the food later
15 cases of beer and wine.
No, we paid for we paid for the drink at the time. But I think we had to pay for the food. But anyway. But of course it was fabulous because the boarding hotel was on the beach, just
It was
near the
lovely,
beach.
yeah.
It was lovely.
So how old were you, Leslie?
She was 12.
I just
She turned 12 when we got there.
Yeah.
We met, I don't know whether you met Jill and Murray McDonald that night. Probably. You might have met them going through.
Yeah.
They had a granddaughter. But they were the first people we met. Well, I was in the hotel having breakfast on the balcony outside, as I did once the kids all went to school. We had to take them. And I was sitting talking to Reg Dalzell, who was a New Zealand surveyor over there, and this woman arrived, younger woman arrived, and he introduced us because Jill McDonald was from New Zealand, and she just had a little 2-year-old, and a just new baby she'd had, and I, we talked. Leslie's birthday was coming up, and she said, "Oh, you must come to our place. Come and have the barbecue, the birthday party at our place. Celebrate the 2-year-old Alex's birthday and Leslie's together." So this 2-year-old and the 12-year-old had their birthdays together at their house. They lived right on the golf course because he was with a New Zealand insurance company
So
over there.
you didn't have to work when he was in Samoa?
No, I didn't work. We weren't allowed to work, but Pauline Toy, who was a nurse, she did voluntary work up at the hospital while we were there, and we did. Pauline and I did. We did voluntary work of our own choosing, of course. We took the children from an orphanage out to the beach once a week, and then I also worked. We both did. We both worked at the family planning place at one stage or other too. I remember doing that. Yeah, but no, we weren't allowed to work. But then, of course, when we got our house, you see, then the schooling thing, oh, that was a laugh and a half, because we had to have, Martin's school used to start at 7 o'clock. So I'd be up, I'd take Martin to school, come back, the kids in that meantime would have their breakfast, with the armour getting the breakfast. Then I'd drop Leslie off at high school, Saba College. Then I'd take the 2 kids down to English primary. Then I'd take Mark to his little private school. And then somebody finished at 12 o'clock and somebody finished at yeah, you spend your life running around. Then you have to go and do your shopping, at the down at Far Hen.
So it would have been pretty cheap to live there.
I don't
getting
know.
paid in New Zealand dollars,
We were getting very good money. No, we got twice as much as we got good money. Unfortunately, Martin was not good at money and shouted the world and his wife. He had the highest bar bill when we left. We actually had to get money from New Zealand, from our rent in the bank, to get out of Saba, because we owed the the shop where we shopped, and we had to pay for things to get home. Like the car came back for nothing, but we had to pay for everything else to come back, all our furniture and everything. Yeah. And unfortunately, whereas Dallas and Pauline came back and bought a holiday home. Dawn and Tony came back and built a house.
You paid a bar tab.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
Life's not about possessions; it's about having fun.
It was.
And you
it
definitely
was,
did
it
that,
was.
didn't you?
As I say, that when Martin and I separated, for the first time I could actually keep. I think that's probably why I still keep a record of in my checkbook of everything that every time I get money out and everything I spend, because for the first time ever I could actually check on in the checkbook. I would do it at the end of every term. I would do it, and then Martin would come home and say, "Oh yeah, well I paid the tea bill at school." Oh God, you never knew where you were. So
took control of your finances eventually.
It was hopeless, pretty hopeless with money. That's why we never had much. Yes.
I think it's a bit of a common theme. George wasn't very good either.
No, George was hopeless with money.
I don't think
But he didn't.
I think Bob's got a good reputation.
No, that's right. But George didn't spend the money.
No.
He wasn't. Mother
wasn't
took.
allowed it.
Mother. That's right. Mother took the pay packet. But then again, you see, he hadn't had it in the Navy, so he hadn't actually ever had it to spend.
He did have spending money because
he had spending
he used to
money.
send me up to the
and he used to go.
TAB.
He always had the wee gambling streak.
Yeah, he used to sit in the shed out here.
That's right. No, there. Was at the bottom of the garden, just there.
With his radio on, listening to the horse racing,
right.
and
It was originally the chicken coop.
Is that right? I was the bookies runner. He used to say, "Oh, just run up to the TAB and put this on, this on, this on." As if it was just like,
Well, he
that
did.
time I was.
He always did it. Yeah.
But it wasn't. It wasn't far really, was it?
No, it was just
now I think.
Yeah.
In those days, I was running with the Hash House Harriers and 23 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Didn't really care.
Running up the road,
Exactly.
there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, so Saba was fabulous. We joined the golf club, the yacht club, and the sports club.
I can't imagine Martin playing golf.
He did play golf for the time we were over there.
Did he?
Yeah. Yes, he had a nice set of clubs and he brought back, and I started playing golf, and it was fun to start with, and then it got serious, and I thought, not for me, mate. Couldn't wait.
Don't let golf get
so I didn't do
serious.
it. But of course he bought a little yacht, and he and Lane used to sail the yacht. got photos of that. And then on a Sunday we'd go sail across to the islands, and it was lovely. Dear little yacht, little 14-foot. And because it had been a little 18-foot mullety that I'd met him on. It was a little 18-foot mullety that when I first met him. They were very popular because a couple of my boyfriends had 18-foot mulleties as well.
Don't know what one is, but
No.
I'll take your word.
You ask Lane, you'll know.
It's an 18-foot sailing boat, I presume.
Yeah, but they always used to say they sleep too comfortably and fall passionately.
I'll have to get one then.
We actually kept it until after we were married. We had it over at Birkenhead, and one time Robert, well, it was a school trip or a Sunday school trip or something. They had it at Matiatia, that's right. And so we were going, Mother and George and Robert went on this school picnic, school or church, some picnic they were having down there. And Martin and I were sailing down. We were going to pick Robert up, I think, and sail back with him. Well, we sailed down there all right, but the seas were like this.
Oh.
And Martin dropped the anchor, but we couldn't actually get into the wharf, and we couldn't get Robert off. Well, they were on the. It was pretty rough, you know. It was like this, and so Martin tried to pull the anchor up, and it hooked onto the cable. So he actually had a hell of a job getting this thing up to unhook the cable off it. And so, anyway, so we got out of the boat, and we started up back, and we got up in front of Rangitoto, and the wind dropped, absolutely dead, from windy to nothing. So of course we got up later and later and later in the dark, and we inched along, and it wasn't until we got to the channel that by this time it's 12 o'clock at night, you know.
Oh,
And
God.
you know, we got enough wind to get back into. We got home at some ungodly hour of the morning, but yeah, it was a long day. But it was beautiful out there. I can remember sort of sitting out there in the boat, and, you know, the stars shining with no wind, because she had no motors or anything, you know. Yes, that was quite interesting. I always remember that. But then, yeah.
I think we've got a full camera there. Switch it off for a while.
Right.
We can always, anything we've missed we'll have to redo. I don't think we've missed anything much, have we?
Oh,
We've got up to,
well.
it's all the old
Don't you want
stuff.
to hear all the rest?
Yeah, I do.
When
I
we
do.
came back and when you came.
I brought some
I know,
tea if you